What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Psytrance. And we're back with another tune presented by Raja Ram, which is to say this is on Raja Ram's Stash Bag 3. I do believe there were a couple other releases. I think all of them are pretty rare, though it's given the subtitle Album Sampler 2, and indeed, it is a sampler. It's a compilation of a few different artists, although there are 2 tracks by GMS. And at this point, GMS, I think, was just one guy, though at different points there were up to like 3 or 4 members. I think 4 members overall, but by this time, 2004, so more than 20 years ago, I think it was down to one guy who goes by Ritcam, or Ricktam. I'm not sure of the particular pronunciation, but yes, ultimately we're going to listen to a tune called Tudo Mundo, which I'm taking to mean the whole world, all around the world. And that does seem to be a theme and concept that you encounter on a lot of the TIP.World releases. Indeed, I'm thinking of the 1200 micrograms album, The Time Machine, which makes reference to different regions and different times. We'll go through that one. It's a double LP, well worth listening to. And in fact, I think I've already reacted to maybe a remix from it, which is to say I reacted to the Save the Robot remix of Grease, with the original one being on The Time Machine. In any case, this track has not only a like folk song sample, which I think might be Brazilian, but it has this really cool female like melodic vocal that flourishes a couple different times in the track. It's also got, you know, really dynamic synth work, the rolling Psytrance bass line, also a bit of dissonance in a couple sections. So it's a journey, like most Psytrance tunes are, so let's give it a listen. This is by GMS, which, again, that originally meant Growling Mad Scientist, but I think they only went under that name when it was like a trio or maybe even 4 people. One of whom I think was mostly a DJ, but he did contribute to a few of the tracks in the 90s. In any case, eventually they just started going by GMS, and I think especially once it became like a solo project with the one guy, which, you know, is by this era, I believe. They just went by GMS. In any case, this is GMS. The track is Tudo Mundo, and it's from the 2004 Raja Ram Stash Bag Sampler 3. Or like Stash Bag 3 Album Sampler 2. I do believe we're going to hear some guitar before the end of the track. These like synth birds. Tune. I'm trying to remember the mix I used that in. Maybe Astonishing. I can check in a moment. I can keyword search my music computer where I keep all my DJ mixes, and because I put track lists in Word files, if I type in the name of a track, it'll bring up a list of any mixes that I've used it in. But yes, so again, I like all the different elements. Indeed, Psytrance is one of the genres that it's like hardest to talk about the sonics, because often tunes are so layered and these just little synth details, whether they're sort of one-off, like arrhythmic sounds like in the middle of a bar or measure, or of course the more cyclical and rhythmic ones. And again, whether it's like little percussive rhythms and layers, there's just so much going on in Psytrance tunes that it's almost like hard to dissect the different ingredients, whereas, you know, something like acid techno, not to say there isn't dense acid techno, of course there is, but there tends to be like a smaller number of ingredients, and most of them are like rhythmic and part of the, you know, rhythmic structure of the track, whereas Psytrance tends to have these like anomalous synth elements or melodic elements that are, you know, like either outside or adjacent to the like rolling structure of the tune itself. But yes, I love that female vocal, which it comes in like true sounding, especially in that breakdown, even when we first hear it, but it's also like fragmented and with like effects on it at different points. Then there's that folk song sample, which again, I don't know for sure, but it sounds like it might be Brazilian. And then of course the guitar comes in, a real like wicked guitar, which is funny because given the like mind expanding psychedelic nature of Psytrance, you wouldn't necessarily expect guitar to be a recurrent element in the genre, but it actually is. It comes in a lot of different tracks, especially like within the TIP.World label, like Acid for Nothing, and ultimately there's another tune. Indeed, I mentioned The Time Machine by 1200 micrograms. There's a track called Rock for the Future, which has a real kind of like wicked guitar element throughout the tune, so we'll come back and listen to that one in reaction form in the not too distant future. But I do like the way that seemingly comes not out of nowhere, but you're through like 75 or 80% of the track at that point when it comes in, so it's a bit of a surprise. And as I said, there's like smooth melodic elements in this one. There's sections with sort of dissonant, like wicked, like wired type of synth sounds. There's those like chirping and melodic like synth birds. It has a lot of variety over the course of this one. It's a journey, as I will keep saying most Psytrance tracks are. So again, shout out to GMS, which again I think at this point was one guy, but throughout their history there were other people involved. Shout out to Roger Ram, shout out to TIP.World. Let me know what you think, And as I said before I say goodbye or peace, as I always do, let me just search for... It is astonishing, yeah. And apparently that's the only mix I've used it in, which is a little surprising. I suppose when I come back for the next Psychedelic Flights, I'll have to include this one. And yes, ultimately, as I said, if you're curious to hear what this sounds like in the context of a mix and with samples from Carl Sagan's Cosmos, you can check out my astonishing mix. Do let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.